Thanks to the panel, and thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member. You all were here with the ambassador was here. If you could have traded places with the ambassador or the actual USTR ambassador, and there were two things that you would implement which would help our small businesses in the arena of free trade, fair trade, what would be the two policy initiatives that you would enact?
Congressman West, I'll respond to that first. And it was addressed by Ranking Member Velasquez a couple times earlier today. Those of us that are involved in international trade would like to be involved and would like to be somehow in the discussion of some of the negotiation,
not so much the negotiation,
at the table, so that we understand what is on the table. I hear all the time from customers in Asia their fear of what this is going to be. They're asking me questions about what is involved in this TPP. To be honest with you, I don't know the nuts and bolts of the TPP, but I would like to be more involved in that. So that's one thing.
And that concerns me because, Mr. Luden, you asked us to make sure we support the TPP, but Mr. Senator just said he doesn't exactly know what's in it, and that's one of the problems we have up here on Capitol Hill. Sometimes we pass things that we don't know what's in it. But next.
Congressman, if I might, I will, the two things that I would think would help small businesses the most in the United States are on the trade liberalizing front, generally speaking, reducing tariffs and non-tariff barriers, both overseas, but also importantly here in the United States, I think would be significantly beneficial. It always needs to be remembered that when we talk about improving the opportunities for small businesses and businesses generally to be competitive internationally, that often, imports are an important part of that equation. And in fact, the statistics do demonstrate that approximately 55% of imports into the United States are actually used as inputs into production process, into making other goods which are then sold. So actually reducing those type of barriers can also be particularly helpful. The other thing, which is probably not particularly necessarily in the purview of the USTR, but I think would go a long way towards improving the competitiveness generally of small businesses, are some of the more longer term but really crucial policies which revolve around things like education, innovation, infrastructure, and creating really the environment here in the United States which allows these businesses to be highly productive and competitive.
And if I may answer, Representative West, I would agree with Mr. Sinner that the inputs from the SMEs to the USTR to these processes, and although I'm sure they're getting them, maybe a wider ask to the SMEs so that they knew it was available to speak on those topics, a way of soliciting comments, soliciting input, maybe in a more aggressive manner, I think would be very helpful. The other point I would go back to is Brazil, that one of the representatives brought up. It's a booming market. It's a burgeoning market for our type of product. The disparity, I think you brought that up.
Yeah, 65% to 3%.
Yeah, the disparity is something that, although the USTR is working on it, that's something that, if that's equalized out, could certainly open new markets for us. And to your point about the TPP, yeah, I do urge you to support it, but only as all the members have said, if it's well crafted and if it makes sense. So in the overview standpoint of being able to reduce tariffs and to break down trade barriers, that makes sense and totally in favor of that. But done poorly, no, a bad bill is not a good bill.
Absolutely.
From our standpoint, the free trade agreements don't directly impact us quite as greatly, only from the standpoint of we have such a diversity of industries that we cater to. We're not focused through electronics, through textile, through one other one necessarily. But bottom line is it is important that the organizations that are supposed to be helped have some input into what's being crafted into the bill.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, last question. Will there ever come a time when we don't need the Export-Import Bank?
I think not. When you're dealing with smaller companies, our sales are 10 to 15 million range, and we simply don't have the resources in any other way, or it's also a safety net. If a customer defaults on a bill or defaults on payments, the Ex-Im Bank is able to, it acts as an insurance policy in addition to it, so it allows us to go after things which otherwise might be too risky.
My comment is we don't use Ex-Im Bank. We use an international credit insurance company. It works fine. We did use some Ex-Im Bank a few years ago, but the level of protection was a little bit lower than going with international credit insurance company.
Okay.
We don't take advantage of the Ex-Im Bank either at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member, I yield back.